Happy Thursday, we'll say.
Yeah. I got one more person. Okay. So, yep. Just like Lisa said, happy Thursday. Thank you for coming back and joining us today. We have a handful of staff with us today, so we're really excited. And we have a guest speaker. So, Lisa, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Lisa Opert. I'm a parent consultant with CPAC, and I'm a mom of 4 suddenly very needy children today, but normally pretty easygoing. Yeah, how about you, Keo?
Hi, my name is Keo, and I work for CPAC. I also have 4 kids, 2 of them on IEPs and 1 on 504.
Laura?
I'm trying to figure out how to unmute. Like, I haven't done this 100 times. My name is Laura Knapp. I'm another parent consultant at CPAC, and I have 5 children, 3 of which were on IEPs, 1 on 504, and various different disabilities and abilities ranging from mental health to very complex medical needs.
So my name's Leona Domchak, and I have 3 kids. I'm a parent consultant with CPAC as well. I have all boys, so my house has always been very busy. 2 on IEPs and 1 on a 504, and I really appreciate everybody coming out today for our support call, our English support call today. Keo, we're still admitting people, and so that's really exciting. We have a wonderful group with us today. Keo, would you mind introducing our guest today?
Absolutely. Today we're welcoming Dr. Adria Doubleday-Stern, and she's on the call, and she's going to talk to us for a little bit.
Hi, I'm Adria Doubleday-Stern. I'm a child and adolescent psychologist. I work for the Fairhaven Clinic in New Haven. And what we're going to do today, I'm going to pull up my screen and we're going to talk about helping kids with anxiety. Slideshow. There we go. So the first thing I always like to talk about is the difference between anxiety that's a problem and anxiety that is totally normal. Because everybody is a little bit worried right now. There's a lot going on. And a little bit of anxiety is normal and in many ways necessary. It's a big part of what keeps us all safe. So when we talk about anxiety, one of the things that I think is always important to really know is that anxiety isn't a problem until it starts messing with your day, until it affects the way you live your life. The example I always give people is if someone's standing on a street corner waiting to cross the street, we want them to have a little bit of anxiety because we want them to look both ways. That's what keeps us safe. Anxiety is protective. However, what we don't want is the person standing on the street corner to look and then say, oh, but I need to look that way. Oh, but you know, it might be that. And all of a sudden they're stuck on the street corner and they just can't get anywhere. So when we're talking about anxiety, we're not talking about the protective factor that keeps us safe. We're talking about the thing that leaves us stuck on a street corner and then we can't go get our ice cream. So when we're talking about COVID-19, the coronavirus, like I said, a lot's going on to make people anxious and to really affect kids. Schools, businesses, all the stuff that we normally do are closed. They're just starting to reopen, and there's all this debate about should we reopen, what should reopen. If you're going to go out, you need to wear a mask. All of this stuff is new and different for kids. If the kids are catching any bits of news, there's a lot of talk about sickness and death. And right now, a lot of kids are really isolated from friends, family, teachers, all the supports that help keep them going. And a lot of the adults in their lives are stressed and worried right now. So it is normal and natural for a kid to feel kind of worried and anxious right now. And almost all kids are going to have questions about what's happening right now. So just, knowing that kids are in this world with all of this anxiety around them and they don't have access to so many of these supports. Like we said, seeing their friends, having recess, all of this stuff, it can be really tough to be a kid right now. So how do kids show us that they are anxious? Because kids don't typically do this the way adults do, by saying, hey, I'm anxious or stressed. With kids, you'll see changes in mood. So you'll see that they are more, they're crying more. They get scared over things that didn't scare them. I had one kid the other day who was saying, yeah, I've been thinking about this scary movie. And the mom said, you don't watch scary movies. And the kid referenced something from 2 years ago. And the mom was there going, that was 2 years ago. Why are you thinking about it now? And that's typical of a kid who there's anxiety in his world. And so all of a sudden, all of this anxious stuff is coming up. They get more irritable, they get more whiny, they get more clingy. All of a sudden, you can't leave the room without, where are you going? Why are you going? Can I go with you? You're like, I was gonna go to the kitchen for a spoon. You know, you've got a shadow everywhere. Any little thing gets them mad. They're really easily frustrated. We see this a lot with school right now. Things that they could do before, all of a sudden, I can't do it. I'm not going to try. They're upset, they're frustrated, they're angry. They get very oppositional. Everything becomes a battle. Go wash your hands. No. And all of this can really get to adults for sure, especially because it seems to come out of nowhere. Another way that kids show us that they're anxious, changes in behavior. They're not interested in things that used to be fun for them. A kid who was really active and really into soccer or basketball just doesn't seem to care about it. And they're just kind of sitting on the couch, staring at, videos of people playing games or something like that. I said all kids will have questions right now, but a kid who is anxious is typically asking the same questions over and over and over again. You may see changes in sleeping or eating. So all of a sudden they don't want to eat, or all of a sudden they're eating all the time, or they don't want to sleep. Nightmares are not uncommon. So you'll see kids all of a sudden waking up in the middle of the night when normally they slept through the night, or they're waking up really early, or they're staying up really late. Or the alternative, they're going to bed at 8 o'clock and sleeping until noon. And you're like, why is my kid so tired all the time? Acting out, you'll see more tantrums. You'll see more aggressive behavior. There's a lot of anxiety is a really energetic thing. And so when you have a kid with anxiety, all of a sudden they seem to have all of this pent up energy that they can't burn off. And you'll see a lot of phantom illnesses. You'll see kids where my stomach hurts, my head hurts, which of course is going to create a whole lot of anxiety in the adults around them, because we're all keeping a special, do you have a fever? Are you coughing? All of this stuff. And kids tend to be able to describe things in terms of their bodies more than they can in terms of their feelings. So you will have kids saying, my stomach hurts, my head hurts, I don't feel good. And that tends to be referent, and that can be, obviously, it can be an illness, it can be allergies, it can also just be so much worry that they don't have any sort of outlet for. So one of the first things that I like to advise parents is please be the gatekeeper. It's not always easy, but you do want to make sure you know what your kids are watching, reading, and hearing. Back before the schools closed, I was in one of the elementary schools, and the kids who were coming in every single day were talking about coronavirus. And they didn't always have the most accurate information because they're getting it from other kids. And so the things that sort of go round among groups of kids from what one kid watched or heard on whatever YouTube channel, it'll run through a classroom, it'll run through a friend group. So having a sense of what your kids are watching or reading, filtering the news as much as possible in your own house. So if you're watching it, being aware that your kids are listening. And, you know, it's not to say never watch the news, but be aware that your kids are listening, check in with them, try to have it be a news channel that's on the calmer side as opposed to a lot of screaming talking heads. And have a conversation about it. Check in with your kids if they're watching the news right next to you. Be aware of your own worries and anxieties. This is so important. It's very hard to calm someone down when you are not calm. We all know this when we're trying to calm our kid down and we're, you know, internally panicking because our child is having a tantrum in the middle of Walmart. It's really hard to calm them down when we're all stressed out on our own. So if you're going to have a conversation with your child about the coronavirus, making sure that you are checked in with yourself so that if the conversation starts to stress you out, you can pause, you can stop, you can say, hey, I need a minute, so that you're coming at this from a place of calm, because our kids have such good radar. They pick up on what you're feeling. They know when you're worried, and they will respond to that. And going along with this, take care of yourself. Again, this is not to say, oh, that's easy, just, you know, relax and do your own thing. We're all managing and balancing so much right now. But we do need to make sure that we take time for ourselves, that we check in with ourselves, that we release some of our own tension and our own nervous energy, excuse me, that we are giving ourselves what we need, getting enough sleep, eating well. Because if we haven't taken care of ourselves, it's so much harder to give our kids what they need. You know, the old thing from being on airplanes, you have to get your own mask on before you put on anyone else's mask. It's really true. If we are not in an okay place ourselves, it's difficult for us to help our kids get to an okay place. So being open to questions. This is so important because kids ask a lot of questions. And their questions may seem silly. You know, will there still be ice cream? Their questions may seem extreme. What if everyone dies except for me? But these are real fears, and kids aren't always able to say, you know, I'm feeling really nervous because everything seems like it's changed. They may just have a meltdown because they think all the ice cream is gone. And so talking to kids about those questions and listening to them and say, you know, when a kid is saying, will all the ice cream go away? Letting that, instead of kind of brushing that off or saying that's silly or why would you ask that, you know, really talking about that and being able to say, well, sometimes we can't get ice cream in the store because the stores are selling out of things. But there is still ice cream. They're still making ice cream. If we can't get it today, we'll see what we can do. And the extreme questions do happen. Kids are extremists. So when they're hearing about illness and death, they're going to bring that home really quickly. If a kid says, what if everyone else dies? They're actually concerned that they could lose a lot of their support systems because they have already. It's a scary experience for a kid. And so, again, that's not to say that you're going to sit there and go, yes, it's very possible that this could happen when it isn't. But you also don't want to be dismissive. You want to make space for that anxiety and let the kid express that they're really concerned. Keeping answers age appropriate is so important. Younger kids, your goal is to be a calming presence and to let them know that they're safe. That doesn't mean you're going to lie to them. I am a huge proponent of not lying to kids because you lose so much credibility that way. And because they're going to find out the truth eventually, and it's better that they hear it from you. So age appropriate for a 5, 6, or 7-year-old could be, well, yes, there's a virus out there and it's making some people very sick, but here are the things we're doing to stay safe. Older kids, especially teenagers, they're going to have a lot of information, and you can get into a really solid discussion with them about the details. Again, knowing where your kid is at developmentally and how they conceptualize things. When in doubt, start simple and work up. And I think that's really true of any difficult question that a kid asks. You start at the simplest answer and you let the conversation expand, and kids will let you know when they've had enough, when they're ready to stop. Or they'll ask more detailed questions that you can provide more detailed answers to. And one thing that's so important is being able to say, I don't know. Because the truth is, there's a lot of things we don't know right now. The number of questions I've heard from kids and parents, what's going to happen in September? When will the schools open? What will schools look like when they open? Everybody wants to know that right now, and nobody does. And so rather than come up with an answer that sounds good but might not be true, or blow off the question saying nobody knows that right now, or, you know, that's a silly question right now, don't worry about September, focus on now. It's okay to say, you know, we don't know what's going to happen in September. We don't know what school's going to look like. And then talk about what you do know, which is, I know the teachers are really hoping to get back to school. I know the teachers miss seeing your faces. It sounds like you're really missing some of the really good parts of school, even for the kids who are, you know, celebrating that there's no school right now. They're missing their friends. But it's okay to start with, I don't know what school's going to look like in September. Let's talk about what's really important to you about school. And this is coming right into the next thing that's so important for parents to do, which is to listen to your kids and follow what they're saying. You want to ask as many questions as you answer. So, what's school going to look like in September? I don't know. What's really important to you about school? Are there things you miss? And then let them take the lead. Is everybody else going to die and I'm going to be the only one here? What would make you think that? Asking these really open-ended questions. What do you think would happen? What are you missing about school? What are you hoping school will look like in September? Are there things you liked about distance learning? It's so important with kids to keep questions open-ended because kids love to tell adults yes. And I'm sure at least one person is now giving me a shocked look. My kid loves to tell me no. But the truth is, kids go with the easiest answer most of the time. So if you say, are you feeling worried about school? They will say yes. Are you worried about somebody in your family getting sick? Even if they weren't, they will tell you yes. So easier to say, or rather better to say, you know, instead of, are you worried that someone in your family is going to get sick? Have you been thinking a lot about people getting sick? Tell me what you've been thinking. So they'll say, yes, I've been thinking a lot about people getting sick, but you kind of knew that one from the, you know, is everybody else going to die? Tell me what you're thinking about. Tell me what you've heard. You don't want to tell kids what they're thinking or feeling because they will go along with what you've said. And it can sometimes be a thing where you want to suggest things that sounds really scary to something that a kid has said that sounds really scary. But I guess part of it is being honest and talking about yourself rather than telling a kid what they think. You know, Mommy, what if there's no ice cream ever again? I would really miss it if there was no ice cream ever again. Is that something you've been thinking about? And so letting them kind of talk, or what makes you think that that could happen? What would happen if there was no ice cream? And this lets kids tell you so much more about what's going on for them. Another thing that parents really need to do that is really tough right now is to give kids structure and routine. So we want to have kids on regular meal and sleep schedules. We all know from ourselves that when we are not eating well, when we are not sleeping well, it is harder for us to manage our own emotions. And we're adults who've had a lot more practice at it. So when we're talking about kids, part of helping them to manage anxiety is making sure they have these internal resources that can allow them to manage their feelings. So not letting them get too hungry, not letting them get too sleepy, having good healthy food in them as much as possible so that their bodies are feeling rested and refreshed. As much as possible, we want to have a schedule for school and for times that are not school. School has gotten tougher, and for a lot of kids, it wasn't that easy to begin with. So many kids are struggling with distance learning. Schools do it differently, teachers do it differently. Kids have different resources, and so kids are dealing with teachers that want them to be up and raring to go at 7 a.m. So many kids have said to me, especially teenagers, we never got this much work when school was open. I feel like the teachers are giving us 3 or 4 times the amount of work. Are they? I don't know. Could be the teenagers complaining a lot, but I'm hearing it a lot from some really good students. And that's not to fault the teachers. That's to say that this is a stress on top of what they're already experiencing. And so for school, as much as possible, not letting it expand into the whole day. It's really easy to have that happen, especially when the kids are struggling, when they're kind of pushing back, I don't want to do this, please don't make me, or just sitting and staring at the screen and refusing to do it. Being able to say, we're going to work on math from 9:30 until 10, then we're going to do reading from 10 to 10:30, then we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back and do a little more math from 11:30 to 12, so that it doesn't feel like this sort of unending slog through all this work. But also so that they're not sitting there going, if I just ignore this long enough, someone's going to let me play Fortnite. So having that schedule for school and for not school times can help kids stay calm about it, can help feel like it's contained. Regular movement and exercise breaks. One of the things so many parents are saying to me lately is, he's got all this energy, he's always jumping, he's always all over the place. And kids are missing so much movement in their day right now because going to school incorporates so much movement. Even if there's only 1 PE class a week, which I think they're supposed to have 2, beyond that, there's still the physical movement of, I walk to my classroom, I walk to my seat, I go get a pencil, I go back to my seat, I go to the closet to get my jacket, I go back to my seat. I need to go to the bathroom, so I walk down the hall, I go back to my classroom. I walk to the water fountain, I go back to my classroom. You can hear there's lots of little moments where kids are moving their bodies. And again, that's also not even considering recess or going down the hall to art or music or having a gym class. So kids are moving their bodies much less than they're accustomed to. They've got that energy, they need to use it. So having these movement and exercise breaks during the day when kids are able to jump, to wiggle, to run in some kind of way. It's not always easy. We're all in much smaller spaces than we're used to being in, but certainly clearing, I always tell kids, put your arms out to the sides and swing them, and you shouldn't be able to touch anything. That's all the space they need to be able to move around. There are a lot of videos online, even just 2 and 3 minute brain breaks that let kids move around or dance around, or you play some music and have a dance party. Anything you can do. And again, as much as possible on a structure. We're doing math for half an hour. We have a 5-minute brain break. We're doing reading for half an hour. Then we're going to go and have some lunch. Then we're going to go and run around for a little while, and then we're coming back. All of those times of movement, even simple things like sending your kid to their bedroom to get something and then come back to the living room, can be so helpful to get their body moving a little bit. And of course, especially as the weather's getting nicer, any time that you can get those kids outside for some fresh air and some running around time is going to benefit them. And so one of the most important things I'm going to emphasize for parents is be reassuring. Our kids come to us for comfort. When a kid is anxious, they're looking to us to let them know that there are things we're doing to keep everybody safe and okay. So whenever possible, we want to talk about the hopeful things. We want to talk about how, we've been doing a lot of important stuff so that fewer people get sick, so that we can hopefully go back to school, to the playground, to all those places that we want to be. It can be really helpful to talk about those concrete steps that everybody's taking to stay safe and to protect those kids. So we can talk about it on a family level. You've seen that we wash our hands, that when we go outside, we put on our mask, all of these things that we're doing to keep you safe. And also talking about the city, state, or country. Yeah, they passed a rule that everybody's wearing masks now. They passed a rule that only a certain number of people can get together. And these are things that they're doing to make the virus stop. Focusing on what kids can do. Every single kid, once they're old enough to walk and talk, is usually able to wash their own hands, or to have their hands washed, or to use sanitizer. That is something every kid is doing right now. And talking about that, letting kids remind you to wash your hands. Please make sure when we get home, you remind me to wash my hands first thing. Kids love telling their parents what to do, and it gives them a sense of control. One of the hardest things right now is this feeling that everybody's a little out of control, because we don't have control. We don't control when the school's open, neither do the teachers. We don't control what it's going to look like in September. We don't control when we're working or how we're working or if we're working. We don't control if the grocery store has milk today. So everybody is looking for those little pieces of control that let them feel a little bit safer. So focusing on what kids can do. Again, washing their own hands, reminding you to wash your hands. All of these steps, remembering their mask or remembering your mask. These are things that kids can do, and they'll help. make sure you're keeping home a safe place, which means just talking about that this is a place where we're taking the steps we need to, that things are safe and comfortable, and this is a place where you can feel good. And keeping those lines of communication open, making sure that your kids know that they can come to you. This is going way back to when I said we really want to make sure that as parents, we have our own oxygen masks on so that we can be present for those questions, so that we can say, I need a minute to think, so that you're giving answers that feel good for you, that are honest, that are comfortable for your kids, so that your kids are willing to come to you again and again and again, because they will, and talk to you about what they're feeling, what they're worried about, what they're hearing. All right, I think I'm going to pause right there. Any questions? Anything I can answer?
So if anybody has any questions, just go ahead and unmute yourself, or you can type it in the chat and we can ask it for you.
I was gonna say, Adria, that I had mentioned to you before when my son had a rash through his body, how he had started freaking out because he kept thinking, and I never mentioned coronavirus. It was never in my radar for him. He's 8, but he started saying, I don't want to die. And he was so fearful of going to the doctor. So our first visit was through FaceTime, but he didn't get better. So then I said, I'm going to take you to urgent care. And it took so much just to get him out of the house because he kept insisting that he didn't want to die. And his fear was so legit, like you could see it in his body, in his face, the crying. And it was great because when we got to urgent care, they would have people wait in the car. So when I called in, they would like come in. So we were the only ones in the waiting area. They called us in quickly. They gave him meds. And we were able to leave. And I'm like, do you see that? Everything went so smooth and quick. But the fear, I didn't expect that. I didn't know where that came from. Because we don't really watch the news like that. But, you know, they talk to their friends. They know why they're not in school. So he started to generate this idea that he was going to die.
Yeah, and you don't know, you know, I feel like one of the things I've noticed, even just when I'm scrolling Facebook, every third ad lately is for a face mask.
Yes.
Kids are seeing this. It's on YouTube. You know, even if they don't watch the suggested videos, there are COVID videos coming up as suggested videos for like counting songs. You know, it's on their radar. Unless we put them in a bubble, they're going to have thoughts. They're going to have these ideas. And so that's where, again, these lines of communication. And, you know, again, when your child is screaming, I don't want to die, I don't want to die, mommy, I don't want to die. You don't want to kind of have that moment of you're being silly, even though, what? But certainly just being able to say, I hear that you're really scared about something. What makes you think that? Mm-hmm. You know, and then letting them say, I'm sick, you're taking me to the doctor, there's a virus. It could be that simple because kids generalize. It's how all little kids start to understand the world around them, even when they're babies, you know, and they're first learning to talk. They see something with 4 legs. You say, oh, that's a dog. For a while, they will tell you everything with 4 legs is a dog. You know, they're looking at a llama. They're like, doggy. You're like, not quite. And that's just part of how kids learn. And it's as they get older, they add features in. So, you know, first, if it's got 4 legs, it's a dog. Then if it's got 4 legs and it barks, it's a dog. Whereas if it meows, it's a cat. You know, they break it down. Right now, for a lot of young kids, they don't quite get the difference between coronavirus, the flu, tuberculosis, you know, whatever else. You know, a sneeze can mean, coronavirus can mean that they're dying, because that's what they're putting together right now. Mm-hmm. And another thing is, again, the conversations among kids about coronavirus have been, if you get it, you're going to die, which is just not true.
Mhm.
But also, that tends to be the narrative that the news media has, not on purpose, I think, but they don't really talk about recovery numbers nearly as much as they talk about deaths.
Mhm.
And so for a kid, that's what they're hearing. They're hearing coronavirus and death. They're putting it together. And yeah, they're scared.
Mhm. Yeah, Dad's 56, so sometimes they tell Dad, because Dad, we don't really leave the house, but Dad does, and he's the one who runs all the errands. They're like, Dad, you're gonna die.
Mhm.
And Dad is like, can you stop saying that? They're like, but we don't want you to die. And it's the 8 and 11-year-olds. And
Mhm.
sometimes they have cried, and they have this thing in their head that somehow the coronavirus is gonna kill Dad. Dad gets frustrated because he's like, don't say that, don't talk about that. But they're legit fears. They really do think, because sometimes they talk about the age. So for an older person, the virus is more significant, but they don't realize that there's also underlying medical factors that, influence that. But, 8 and 11 is very impressionable age.
Oh, yeah. And yeah, this is one of those moments to really say, why do you keep worrying that Dad will die? Why do you keep, instead of just stop saying that, even though I know it's making him crazy, why would you say that? What makes you think that? Again, these open-ended questions that aren't shutting them down so that they have a chance to say, well, Jaden down the street says that everybody who gets coronavirus is going to die, or some guy on Fortnite named his character coronavirus and he's just coming in and killing everybody. Whatever it is, letting them tell you what they're hearing. And again, I feel like I've had many conversations about saying everything we know about this is that most of the people who get sick with it will get better. And saying it really directly. Am I saying that everybody will? No, because I know that's not true. But our brains are hardwired to focus on a 5% death rate and not a 95% not death rate. So really emphasizing to kids, most of the people who get this will get better. Some of them get sick for a while. Some of them never even know they're sick. And some small group of people will get very sick. But even most of the people who get very sick will get better.
I think also it's a good point that was brought up. You don't know what kids are hearing, and they are being bombarded by messages, even if they're not fully paying attention, whether it's TV ads with masks or something about the coronavirus, something that was said on the news, or even like you said on Facebook, you're seeing images of masks and whatnot. So they're absorbing that, not understanding. So the fears are definitely real.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like we've been seeing lots more anxiety in our house, specifically with our 8-year-old. So it's funny, Keo, that you said your 8-year-old is the one that's struggling probably the most. I think that's the same in our house. And it doesn't necessarily have to do with the coronavirus. I think, so his name is Silas, and my youngest son is Milo, and Milo has autism, and Silas and Milo are very close. Silas is very concerned about when Milo grows up that he wants him to live in his house with him. He talks about it all the time. He wants to share a room with him. He wants to kick his older brother out so him and Milo can share a room. They're very close, very sweet. And he had, like, one of the first nights after school was shut down, he had a dream that they were on the Titanic and he couldn't find Milo. And so he has been having this recurring dream about Milo not being able to save him. And it's happened at least 5 or 6 times that he's woken up screaming in the middle of the night. And we sit down and talk to him, and we talk about, okay, so what's going on? Why do you think this is happening? And so even though it's not about coronavirus, I think that there's just the anxiety of just everything is just too much for him. So he's honing in on what his biggest fear has always been about something happening to his little brother. And it's interesting to see that he can't really move past the idea at this point, when typically he would ask me about it and move on. And now about once or twice a week, we still get, he comes to our room with tears in his eyes, and I say, what's going on? And he goes, I'm just scared to go to sleep because I just don't want to have the dream. I need Milo to be okay. So it's interesting that like the anxiety is just transferring over to all different aspects. You can hear them screaming outside. So.
I feel like 8 is such a tough age for anxiety because you're old enough, you've got this awareness. You can put things together in a way that younger kids often don't. Yeah. But you don't have the cognitive or emotional maturity to sort out you're still all about the extremes, essentially. So, I remember about when I was 8, I all of a sudden was picking up on news in the way that I hadn't before. And there was so much scary stuff happening in the world. When I was 8, there were, I think, 2 plane crashes that year. And I had so many meltdowns about it. I was crying to my dad, who traveled for work. I don't want you to leave. I don't want you to get on a plane. Planes aren't safe. And my father, of course, looked at me and said, you know how much safer a plane is than a car? Which was somewhat not helpful, but it really is true, because I was just old enough to become aware that these bad things happened in the world, but not old enough to have a sense of proportion about them.
Yeah.
And I think that, like I said, I feel like 8 is like prime for that. Yeah. And so, those are some of the kids who get hit hardest. And especially with his little brother, one of the constant drumbeats with coronavirus has been, it's the people who have other things going on who are most at risk. 8 is old enough to certainly know that autism is something else going on, without realizing the difference between autism and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease.
Yeah.
And so, he is going to be very scared for his little brother. And I would almost wonder if one of the things that could help in this situation is talking to him about things that we do to protect our brother and giving him back that control. Because I'm hearing this Titanic, he can't do anything.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how you keep Milo safe.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try that, because it was just last night. That's why I was hoping I'd be able to say something, because this is 3 months now of him, obsessing over this dream. So I think that we'll talk about that. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Does anybody else have any questions, comments? I know that I just wanted to say that what I just found great about the conversation, although we're talking about it in COVID, all of the things that you showed are things that are signs of anxiety, no matter when it comes on. So if I go back to the day that my kids were diagnosed with some of these things, those were the key signs, like in the nurse's office, when we were in school, in the nurse's office every day with a stomach ache at a certain time or a certain subject or a certain, and so watching that, although can completely relate with the COVID specific, like different changes, like the eating too much or not getting out of bed. We have a lot of change in sleep patterns over here. And my kids are teenagers, so they're finding a lot of comfort in those games, and it's changing their sleep pattern, but we still have school and responsibilities, and it's definitely a struggle. But one of the things I definitely picked up on is just the fact that all of those beginning things is it's not specific to COVID. These are great signs, if you see them, to think about having these conversations at any time that anxiety comes on. It was a wonderful presentation. I can't thank you enough for being here today. Is anybody, all you need to do is unmute yourself. I'm just going to check Facebook. We had a couple of people that said that they were unable to be here today, but they were thankful that you did this, and they're going to be watching the recording later today, so that's great. I'm very happy for the crowd we have. I'm just checking and no questions. So if you have questions, you can always reach out to us at CPAC. We can always try to get you the answer to anything that you have. Thank you so much for the presentation today and joining us.
Yeah, if I can say
and to everybody else, I think I'm trying to think.
Sorry, can I say one more thing?
Talk away.
If you feel like your kid's anxiety is getting too much, too out of control, call and look into therapy. Even if it's 1 or 2 sessions and we're talking you through some stuff and we're talking them through some stuff and everything dies down, most people right now, most psychologists and social workers right now are doing therapy through telehealth, the same as this. We wish we could do it in person, but this can still be a resource. So don't feel like just because we're all stuck, in place with COVID, that there aren't these resources available. So I don't even want to say how many therapy sessions I do a week through the computer, because there is a lot of this stuff going on. And just to say, you don't have to feel stuck without any other resources. We are here if your kids are feeling so overwhelmed, or you are feeling so overwhelmed and you need someone to talk to.
Thank you, because it's a very key point, is that if you need it for yourself, going back to what you said about the airline mask, which is funny because I just seen that earlier today. Sometimes we do need to help ourselves first, and to make sure that we have the emotional support and this any kind of support that we need, and also take a little bit of time for ourselves as parents, because this is really hard on our kids as well as us. And one of the things that you did say as well, and I probably won't say it as well as you, but is if we're stressed, then we can't necessarily address, if we're having anxiety, then we can't necessarily address what they need. So it's really to make sure that we can do that. And definitely telehealth. If you haven't done it, I will be honest, I thought it was going to be very difficult, but it's not. And although I miss seeing people in person, I know in this house, we were able to get someone on. I did it myself, got one of my children on. And, it was nice to have them participate. Maybe not as great as if it was in person, but it was nice to have that connection to someone who they had a connection with. So it was, if you were already in therapy, reach out and see if they're doing something. If you're not, reach out and see if you can. So what a great point. Thank you guys so much. Everybody says thank you. The information was so great. We can't thank you enough for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I was going to say, I think Monday night there's a Family Connections call at 4 p.m. And that will be on if you're part of our Family Connections page. Next Tuesday, we'll have another call at 3 p.m. and it will be how to help your child label their emotions. So it's a great play from here. And next Thursday will be our support call at 3 p.m. in between Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right, Keo, for at 1 o'clock for our Spanish support calls. And then they have an outreach call for you as well. Same topic, how to help your child label their emotions at 3 p.m. Right? Is it 3 on Wednesdays? I try to get them all right. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, everyone.